Hey, you guys, and welcome back to another Moments with Mo. So, I want to start off by saying that I am wearing the same outfit because I am recording multiple episodes on one day, so just please bear with me. But on today's episode, we are going to be talking about relationships, and we're actually going to be tackling two different questions. So, the first one is, are my relationship expectations unrealistic? And the second one is, did you really level up when it comes down to breakups? Are you really at peace? Or is it just a facade? So if you guys are interested in hearing more about those topics, then definitely stay tuned for more. So the first question, like I said, is, are your relationship expectations unrealistic? And to answer my own question, at one point I did think that my relationship expectations were unrealistic. And it was basically approaching my mindset towards relationships and what I thought that I needed. And it turns out that what I thought I needed was actually immature. Like, it really wasn't anything of substance. It wasn't anything of quality. And it actually showed me how much I've grown as a person, because it showed me that my needs were starting to develop and I was starting to become more mature with the things that I expect within a partner. And so that brings me to the next topic. And I'm sorry if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes. But that is my type. And I will say that my friends already know. We had this very, very nice dinner. We were having girl talk, and we started going around the table asking what each other's types was, and just like, just tell us, girl, da da da. And when it came around to me, I told them my type, and they were just like, girl, what movie character, what book story, like what have you based this off of? Like, this sounds like a fictional character, and that does not sound like a real partner. It's just, they were just clowning me. They were going in. And me, I was like, no, y'all, no. I'm going to stick beside him, and this is so important, and I'm just, yes, like, it's going to work. Child, it turns out they were right. They were right, and they had every right to be, because, like I said, in one podcast, I think it was the first one, they don't see your type within the infatuated state that you see them. They see it for what it is. And if they want more for you and they realize that you deserve more, they're going to speak up for you if they're really people who care about you. And so I really do think that they did care about me, and I just didn't see it at the time. But when I did realize that, I was like, oh yeah, this is not going to work. My needs are changing. And so another question that I do have for you guys have you actually dated your type? Because some people, they have this whole list of things, but it's like when it comes down to people who they actually date, they're not even really their type for real. And so I have talked to people. Thankfully, we haven't dated. But I have talked to people who have aligned more with my type. And I started to reevaluate my priorities, because it's just like, it's not as cute as it seems in reality. Like, of course, it sounds good. Like, when you're naming it, it sounds like a story. Like, ooh, this is going to be so fun. This sounds good. But in reality, it's like, babe, I'm not even attracted to what you're doing with regards to how you align with my type. It's not anything that I take pride in. If anything, it turned out to be the things that were red flags and ultimately deal breakers for the relationship. And so I think that moves into the next part of the topic, which is how my needs changed and aligning that with what I brought to the table. So because I was growing as a person and maturing at a quick rate, I began to see not only how my needs were unrealistic, but how they were starting to change with things that I actually wanted in a partner. And that comes down to their core values and what they align with, what they stand for, and just what that looks like within a partnership. And so I began to think about what those things are. What do I want to be my starting five when it comes down to my type or the things that I look for in a partner? And so I guess that really comes down to your non-negotiables and things that will be your deal breakers, or things that will confirm that this is the relationship that is for you. And I guess that is something, I didn't write this down, but I am going to say it. There are some relationships that you are not meant to be in. There are some relationships that, for me, like I said, I believe in God. So that's the perspective that I'll be speaking from as a Christian. But there are some relationships that God didn't create. There are things within God's will that he wants you to learn within relationships for certain people. But if he didn't destine for you and another person to be together, you will still go through the things that he wants you to go through. You'll still learn the lessons, but it might look differently, or it might be a lot more difficult for you to learn that lesson because you're in a relationship that you were never meant to be in the first place. You and this person were never aligned. Y'all were never supposed to be together. You forced that to happen. And as a result, you're going to get some consequences for your actions. And so, yeah, I think that comes down to compatibility and just, is this person really meant for you? So I guess those questions that you ask in the first couple of dates, and when you get on the phone, get on FaceTime for the first time, those questions are very, very, very important. And so you need to make sure that you are asking the right questions instead of the questions that really don't make a difference. Like, they really don't matter that much. And so when you're thinking about those questions need to align with the things that you align with, i.e., like I keep saying, your core values. So when you are making sure that you're compatible with this person, what are their needs? What do these things look like? How do they approach certain things? And what is their perspective on certain things? Just because you know that your partner shouldn't necessarily be exactly like you, but they have different experiences. They were raised a different way. But the way that they identify with certain things, you guys should have similar viewpoints when it comes down to those things that are important to the both of y'all. And so I'm going to move on to the next part of this topic, which is stop dating people who aren't your type. Like, stop it. Stop. Like, it's weird. And it's a waste of time, ultimately, because it's just like, if you don't see a future with this person, if you know it's not going to work out because they are not your type, or because you cannot identify what your type is, the relationship is never going to work. So why waste your time with people who you don't really think is going to be able to fulfill your expectations? And it's not fair to them that you're holding them to that standard when you know that they cannot fulfill your expectations. Stand firm in what you want and a person that can align with that, and then hold them to that expectation and seek that within them. But it is unrealistic for you to seek certain things within people that they just cannot provide because they never set themselves out to be able to provide that in the first place. And then they're just not designed to be able to meet those expectations that you seek from them. It's just not going to work. Like, it's not going to work. And so I will say that people present themselves in a specific way, and then you'll be like, okay, I see what you said, but I want what I want. And it's like, they literally just told you that they're sticking to this. And if you know that the things that they're sticking to is different than the way that you want them to stick to it, you're ultimately committing to a project, not necessarily someone who you really want to be with. You think that you can change their mind. You think that eventually they'll change. And it's just not right to date someone who is not aligning with certain things. Like, that's just weird. And it's just not fair to you. You know what I'm saying? You deserve better. You deserve more. And you deserve someone who can meet those expectations, because there is someone out there who can provide the things that you want, who will be able to keep up with those things. And I think that reminds me of this one podcast. I think it's called Poor Minds, and they are on YouTube. So definitely check them out. But there was this guy, and he was like trying to give relationship advice or something like that. And I think I did mention it in another podcast about just like, oh, well, these girls expect so much, da-da-da-da. They want us to bring all this money, da-da-da-da. And it's like, okay, well, if you know that you're not meeting that, stop dating them. If you know you cannot fulfill the expectation of the material or monetary things that they don't think is like the top list of priorities, but it is important to them, don't be mad. Because when you agree to that, it's just like you came with the understanding that you were going to be able to provide that, and you knew you weren't. So for you to think that they're going to change their mind just because you continue to pursue them, it's not fair to them. It's just not fair. And I feel like I said that in another podcast. But yeah, like, I think that at some point it is okay to want to challenge people to do better, but that is completely different than trying to change them as a person. Like, everybody is meant to go through some type of character development, and sometimes you need that help with a friend, with a partner, with your family, and it will help you get to the next level that you're supposed to be at, but that's free will. So you're choosing to say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. I think that I should choose to do better at some point. And the things that you're saying is something that I would want for myself for the future. So I am going to listen to what you're saying, listen to the guidance that you're giving and the wisdom to be able to level up and move into a better place. But that is, like I said, completely different than wanting to change someone and what they stand firm in who they are as a person. And I guess that's when it comes down to compromising as well. Just making sure that there are some things that both of you guys want, but you guys can meet the needs of both of you guys if you're actually willing to compromise as a couple. And that comes with communicating and understanding both parties' needs. And then it comes with, okay, it's a give and a take. Like, I can't always get exactly what I want in the relationship, and you're not always going to be able to get what you want. And sometimes the relationship is not even destined for the both of you guys to be able to get what you want. And that is okay. That's natural. So just make sure that you're compromising, and so that both people can feel like their needs are being catered to. And that comes into my next story. So this is relating to me and my thing with physical touch. So anybody who knows me from elementary school, middle school mostly, kind of high school, but not really, they knew that I was not a hugger at all, like at all. And it's just like, it would be very rare or a special occasion if I gave you a hug. And that's only because, like, with my family, we were just not the most affectionate people. Like, we weren't walking around hugging each other, you know, saying I love you. We really didn't say it often, but it was understood. You know what I'm saying? So when anybody else were to tell me that, it would just be foreign. It would be weird. It was just uncomfortable. And so if a friend was trying to show their affection through a hug, but I wasn't aware of it and it would catch me off guard, it's not like they were deliberately trying to make me feel uncomfortable, but they just simply didn't know. And so they'll reach out for a hug, but if I'm not cognizant of that, then I might accidentally get a little guarded, a little defensive, and you might get hurt in the process. And I do not mean to. It is not intentional. I didn't mean to hurt you or slap you or anything, but it's just like, because my defenses are so like high when it comes down to stuff like physical touch, it just caught me off guard. But it's like, I guess that moves down to the next part of it, which is like, you have to grow out of that. And if someone is trying to expose you to something that's different, be willing to receive and accept it, because most times, if it's a person who you're truly meant to be around or be in a relationship in some capacity with, it turns out to be actually healthy, and you've been so used to an unhealthy state, which you've become comfortable in. So this comes to my next story, which is my friend. And so his thing is kind of like the next expectation, which is, it's unrealistic for you to expect for people to cater to your love language, but you don't cater to theirs. And so I have this great friend. We used to link maybe like once a week, and then it started, so our schedules got crazy, and it was like every couple of weeks or once a month, something like that. And so every time we would catch up, we would have a lot of story times, just great conversation. And then at the end, he would always try to hug me. And I'm like, I'm going to stop you right there, big dog. Like, stop. Like, please do not touch me. And at first, he was like laughing like it wasn't a big deal. But then in one of our conversations, we were just talking about like our regular like conversations, like, oh, my personality type is this, my love language is that. And then it came out that his love language is physical touch. And I think that it is important for you to realize that you need to actively listen when people are telling you things like that, when it comes down to what their needs are. Because I understood, and that's another part, actively understanding and then comprehending and applying. So I understood that it was important to him. So the next couple of times that we would hang out, I would cater to his love language because it's important. It's not necessarily important to me, but it's important to him. And so if he wanted a hug at the end of us hanging out, and I don't know when the next time I'm going to see him, give him that hug because it matters to him. And so eventually you're going to want for them to cater to your love language. And my love language, turns out, is quality time. Or that's one of them. We'll get into the other one later. But I do think that it's important for you to make sure that you are catering to other people's love languages. And that brings me to the next point, which is I realized how important it was once it happened to me. And so I was dealing with this one person, and I was learning that his love language was physical touch, and mine was quality time. And so I was communicating like, okay, well, I think that it's important for us to be able to be around each other, just spend time with each other. And I don't just mean being around each other with no meaning. I mean like being present and all that. And so at some point, I remember that plans were starting to flake, and I really wasn't sitting well with it because I felt like I was being denied my love language because I communicated my expectations, which were spending quality time together, and it wasn't happening. And so it just made me realize how important it was to cater to other people's love languages and not just allow for yours to be catered to. And this goes to another podcast that I saw. I do not remember the name, but she was speaking about how to make long distance relationships work. And she was basically saying that they were having to communicate to each other and not being afraid to have that conversation. And she was saying that the partner's needs were, as long as they're spending quality time, because that was his love language, he was okay with just talking on the phone, having FaceTime calls, and just doing stuff like that. But with her, it would be harder for her needs to be met within a long distance relationship because her love language was physical touch. And so if one person's needs are being catered to and the other person isn't, it seems like the relationship is not going to last because it's unrealistic to think that that's going to work. Now, for some people, they can make it work, but naturally, it doesn't always work out like that. And so I think that it is important to be firm in your love language and making sure that you're establishing that mine is just as important as yours. Not saying that one is more important than the other, but just being steadfast in knowing that, you know what, it's okay for me to stand up for myself and understand that I should be catered to. I deserve love as well, And so that brings me into the next part of the conversation, which is if you can't reciprocate what you're asking for, then it's unrealistic. And I mean that with regards to things that you don't necessarily care for. It's easy to cater to somebody else's love language or meeting their expectations with things that they can reciprocate. But then it's like, okay, well, you know what? If they're asking me to do it, I can do it because I kind of benefit from it too. I'm not talking about that. There are some times where you're not going to benefit from you reciprocating their needs or actions. And you're still going to have to do it because that's what being in a relationship is about. You have to be able to bring the same energy. Like, come on. I feel like sometimes it's irritating because you feel like you're doing more within the relationship or the relationship is one-sided. And so I think this comes down to the specific examples of just like, ooh, I want someone who's super smart. But it's like you can't expect for someone to be super knowledgeable and you're not bringing knowledge or anything for them to learn within the relationship. And it's like this comes in various different areas. It doesn't just come with being like book smart. You can be knowledgeable in multiple different areas and be able to teach somebody something else. But how are you going to expect for them to teach you and bring you all, like put you on game when you don't have anything to bring to the table with regards to knowledge? Like you don't know anything, you never experienced anything. So it's unrealistic for you to expect that from them. Or just for them to be super, super, super rich and just like spoiling you all the time. And you don't have to be super rich to spoil somebody, but it's just unrealistic for you to think they're going to spoil you all the time. But then some men don't care to be spoiled, but it makes people feel good when they're able to be spoiled too. And so there's nothing wrong with spoiling them and making them feel appreciated and loved and seen as well. And I feel like that's a part of reassurance and validation, which is important for relationships as well. So if you cannot provide them with gifts that makes them feel loved and just listen and make sure that you're showing that you care for them as a person, which can be through gifts, even if it's not their love language, it still feels nice to get. And I think another one is just like being a boss. Like, how you gonna want them to be a boss and you a bum? Girl, like, come on. Like, that is weird. Just like you expect, or even like me personally, I feel like I am a boss. I feel like I push myself to just accomplish and do great big things. But it's just like I want a boss, I don't want to settle for someone that's not to my level. And that's another thing that I was going to say about being unrealistic, but we'll move to that at a later point. But it's just like I want someone to be able to show me game, like show me how to move, motivate me to be able to meet my fullest potential, and just like be about it. Like it's very attractive, but it's just like when you're not doing that, how can you expect that of me? You expect for me to accomplish all these things and you're in the same stagnant place. It's just unrealistic. And so I guess that comes down to me learning how to identify my type with regards to things that I know that I can bring, but I would like for my partner to reciprocate. And so I'm going to actually step back because I'm going to be reading this word for word to make sure that I'm communicating this properly. And so one of the biggest things for me was someone who had a relationship with God. And actually, I didn't say someone who believes in God. I said someone who has a relationship with him. And the reason for that is because, like, during the pandemic, I really, really, really wanted to do better. I had the time and I just had the motivation to want to do better. And so I began to set my goal for wanting to read the Bible, like wanting to read the whole Bible. And I am almost finished. And it makes me sad because I did fall off. But I was praying heavy. I was reading the Bible every day. I was working out. I was eating well. And it's just like I knew that I was reaching my fullest potential and walking in my purpose. And that is what God wants for us. And so when you're starting to develop that relationship with him, you start to think better. You start to have more clear thoughts. You start to be a better person. You sleep well. You feel more at peace. And you just experience more wins within that season. And it's very good to be able to be pushed and inspired by someone else who believes in God as well. Because when you see that through them, when you are falling in those areas where you are no longer that heavy in your walking in your purpose and you're not heavy in your faith, you need for them to be able to pull you back up through that fellowship and that partnership and be able to maintain their habits, and their habits are closely aligned with your habits. And so they'll motivate you to continue to do better and just start to go back to your fullest potential, if not even better. But you can't necessarily do that sometimes when you don't see it for yourself. And so sometimes you can't motivate yourself, so you need somebody else to motivate you. And that's where your partner comes into play. So for me, I think it is important for them to have a relationship with me and to teach me things about Christ and show me different ways to approach God and approach other people and just walking with Christ. And so the next thing is actually someone who believes in human rights. But I think the more important topic is just someone who has compassion. And so I'm actually going to make sure that I'm reading this properly, but I think that human rights is very important because when you notice that other people don't have the same rights as you, you want to use your voice. You want to advocate for them, even if you don't necessarily fully align with who they are as a person and what their identity is. And so it is very important for you to stand up for people and have compassion. But when you don't do that, you start to have this elitist mindset where you're better than them, and because their issue is not your issue, you don't have to speak up for it. And here's one thing that I will say. When you're silent on matters of other people's human rights, that is perpetuating a cycle of patriarchy, honestly, because it's just like eventually the patriarchy is going to take away your rights as well. Everybody has to be able to have the same level of rights because it just shows that we're all a united front. But if one person can fall, then any group can fall. So it's very important for you to make sure that we're standing united with other people who are fighting and advocating for their rights and just wanting to speak up for what's right. And it's just me personally, I think as a Christian, regardless of if you agree with certain people's ideology, you have to stand up for people's rights. It's the right thing to do. Everybody deserves basic human rights. Everybody deserves to be happy. And so I just think that when you're silent on certain things, it does make you look like you don't care and you lack compassion. And so I think that especially when people are, it's one thing when you do it on the surface, and it's one thing when people are telling you their stories and they're opening up and they're being honest and they're sharing their experiences. And it's just like, you're just sitting there like, okay. That is so privileged and it's so arrogant, because it's like, you see that you come from a place of privilege, or the things that is so important to them you take for granted. And so it's just like, it's very important for you to say, you know what, even though I don't fully relate to what you're saying, I understand what it feels like to be denied certain things, because at any point minorities can be able to relate on some level. And so when you have that level of compassion, it shows that you are willing to acknowledge your privilege and do something about it. And so that is the reason why I look for someone who advocates for human rights and ultimately has compassion. And then I guess the next thing is just someone who is smarter than me, or someone who can teach me something. And I know that's saying a lot for me, and it is a very high expectation, but I do stand firm in that, because I know that I am very knowledgeable, and this is not to sound arrogant, but I know that I'm able to articulate my thoughts and feelings very well. I know that I'm intelligent when it comes down to, just being cognizant of how society works and mental health and emotional health and just like basic book academic topics. I have a certain level of knowledge on. And so for someone to be able to share their experience with me and be able to allow me to level up and just tell me certain things, it's just very important, and I think it's attractive, and it's just something I look for in a partner, because I want for someone to be able to teach me sometimes. And I don't always want to feel like I'm the one that's putting them on, or the person who's just always knows more. You want someone who can teach you things. And it's just very difficult for you to not feel like you're better. And I know that sounds bad, but it's like when they're on the same level as you, it just makes things feel like everybody's holding the same weight. And so that was actually the next thing. I need someone who's on my level or better than me, because it's just like, I need someone who can present themselves well, who is aware of the fact that people are watching you in society. Whether you want it to happen or not, you have a platform and you are able to influence someone, even if you're not heavily known. And so people are going to watch you whether you like it or not. And whether you want to influence someone, it's going to happen. And so I just think that it's important for you to understand the responsibility that comes with that, because people are always watching. Like, it's very, very, very important for you to just make sure that you present yourself well. You never want to be an embarrassment to someone, and you want to be the type of person that someone takes pride in knowing and having a relationship with. And that is the next part of it, which is, I don't necessarily want to be embarrassed by people who I am associated with. And it's just like, the reason why that embarrassment is so heavy is because they're not on your level and they really aren't your type. And so sometimes it's just like, I have to really, really think to myself, if I had a partner and if they were to talk to my pastor alone, or if they were to talk to my family alone, or my friends alone, would I be able to leave them like that and have confidence that they won't embarrass me, and that they'll actually be able to provide a conversation of substance that's meaningful, that has quality, and they're actually able to relate to the people who heavily influence my life? And sometimes you can never really have that level of confidence in someone else's abilities that's your partner, because you know deep down inside you're not meant to be with them. And I think that it is very important for you to focus on things like that, especially when it comes down to the core values. I'm going to keep saying it. Everybody is so focused on the small details and the packaging, what you look like outwardly, in the smaller things, when you should be focused on the contents that are inside this person. And so you can start to have more confidence in people when you know they align with the things that you align with. And it's like, you don't even have to be the same person. You guys can have different perspectives or different takes on it. But when it comes down to the things that are important, everybody should have a certain common ground when it comes down to standing up for what's right, or just things that just make sense, that should be common sense. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I think that it's very important for you to make sure that you are truly aligning with people who are meant for you, to eliminate those experiences where you might feel embarrassed because you know they aren't your type. And so now I actually have a post that I was looking at on Instagram, and it said, it's from Sammy Always on Twitter. And he said, don't expect peace from a woman if you're not creating the atmosphere for her to be such. A true queen will reflect what you are and then some. Be fruitful, fellas. And I think that that is a great moment with Mo for today, because it's just like, I think I'm going to have two for this episode. But like I said, it comes down to being unrealistic. How can you expect peace within her if you're not even bringing a peaceful atmosphere? You're actually creating chaos within her life, or you're not adding to the peace that she might already have. You have these high expectations for her to be this whole woman, for her to be someone who is just a boss and can take all these things, but you don't acknowledge the areas in which she might not have peace, or she might be dealing with a lot, or she might be stressed out. And instead of saying, you know what, I have a responsibility in that as well to make her feel comfortable and for her to feel at peace, you just do nothing. And so it is unrealistic for you to think that she's going to keep peace within the relationship if you can't even help her maintain her peace. And of course, you shouldn't rely on other people to give you peace, but one would hope that a partner that you truly are meant to be with would help you keep the peace within you. You know what I'm saying? Or they help extend the peace that you already have. And that's what a true partner would do naturally anyway. But now we're going to move on to the second topic, which is relating to after breakups. Are you really at peace, or is it just a facade? And I think that it depends on the relationship that you had, and it depends on the terms that you ended on. So some people, they really are at peace because they suffered so much within the relationship. They had so many tears. They were stressed out. And it's just like when the relationship ended, they could do nothing but be happy, feel a sense of comfort in knowing that they now have the room to grow. They now have the room to do what they want to do. They don't have that dead weight that's holding them down. And they can really begin to, tap into the energy that they always wanted to pursue, which you don't necessarily recognize until sometimes that you're out of the relationship. And then the other thing is, like, some people really be on Instagram and they really just try to gas it. Like, they really be gassing. They be like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. They be going on trips and they be hanging out with their friends and all that. And some people genuinely are happy. But I think that when you're coming from a place of genuine happiness, you don't feel the need to broadcast it all the time. You don't feel the need to prove it to anybody or make sure that you're recording it. It happens naturally, and then when you post, you just post. But when it seems like there are a lot of heavily thought out posts where it's just like party, 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 go out, trip, trip, trip. It's like, babe, if you were already posting stuff like that, then fine, that's fair. But for you to feel like you need to prove something, it's just kind of weird. Like, you need to take a moment of privacy and a moment of reflection to be able to say, like, okay, this is what happened. This is how I broke up. I'm willing to heal. I need the space and time to heal. And then now I can move forward and be happy. And so I think that, I think this comes with also being fake with your friends as well. So, like, sometimes you be like with your girls, you be talking and you be like, you know what? I am so done with him. Like, he is so da-da-da-da. And then you're like, you making it seem like, oh, I'm lit. But then you get home and you're in your head all night and you're crying. Because it be like that. Like, it really do be like that. Like, you get to the point where it's just like, no matter how much that I try to prove to myself I'm not fully healed from this, because they did really hurt me. And it's going to take time for me to be able to process and move forward, because they were a part of my daily routine. They were someone who I thought I saw a future with, and it didn't work out, and it can be hurtful. And so when you take the time to be honest with yourself and say that I was impacted by this and I do need time to heal from this, it makes the journey a little bit more, I'm not going to say easy, but manageable, if that makes sense. And so I think that, I don't know, it's really sad that sometimes you do really have to hate a person to be done with them. And I know some people do say that, But it's just like, it really does happen where it's just like, I am so unattracted to the person who you've become or the person that you're showing me that I truly am at peace with us being over with because I am no longer attracted to you. There is nothing that you can provide for me. We cannot relate anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, there's nothing that you cannot feel peace about when it comes down to an ending because, like I said, they were never meant for you in the first place. And I guess that's when it comes down to actually healing, when you realize that that infatuated version of them that you had in your head is not really what they were presenting in real life. When you look at reality, when you look at the actions that they had, it is not what you want. It is not what you want. And understanding that the place that you were in at that point was, I mean, you were just hooked on their words, but now it's like you see things for what it is. That is a big, powerful moment, and you need to give yourself credit for that because it shows that in a way you are healing and you are growing as a person and developing. And I feel like that character development that you're experiencing at that point, it makes it so much more meaningful because you see the real results. And so, I mean, it is like disappointing for some relationships to end, but it's just like, in my opinion, I would rather be disappointed with like us ending than for me to end on bad terms with you and then I lose respect for you. Because if you disappointed me, you know, there are ways that you can like build on from that, not necessarily saying that the disappointment will ever be like taken away fully, but like you can show me with your actions that you're growing, that you're doing better, that you're holding yourself accountable, and we can move forward versus me losing respect for you. When I lose respect for you, you just look corny. Like, I cannot really take you seriously because I'm always going to be holding on to what you did in the past. And there are some things that you just can't apologize your way out of. There are some things that you're going to have to sit in and be like, wow, I was really messed up when I said something or when I did something. And so, honestly, it just... make sure that at least if you're disappointing people, that you're not forcing them to lose respect for you. Because it takes a lot. It does take a lot for people to get to the point where they really admit to themselves that they no longer look at you as someone who's super great or like someone who's a boss or someone who they want to align themselves with within a relationship. Like, I don't know. And it honestly like forces you to look for a better person than the person that you're with. Like, it forces you to be like, you know what? I still expect these things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I still want these things. Like I said, the top 5. I still want these things, but you know that they cannot provide it. And that's okay. You know what? That's okay. And so you start to look for better. And you realize that you've outgrown them. And sometimes you even recognize that they were the problem, but there were also some ways that you were the problem as well. But when it comes down to true healing, you recognize that you take a part in all of that. And you don't necessarily feel the need to make it seem like they were the whole bad guy because, you, like I said, you contributed to that process in some point as well. So it takes a certain level of self-awareness to be able to acknowledge those things and move forward. So when it comes down to healing, you can't keep the same habits. You have to grow. You have to take time to actually heal. You need to acknowledge the part that you played, and you need to hold yourself accountable. And that's when you know that you have truly healed and moved on from the relationship and that you're at peace and that you're not necessarily putting on a front for your friends. And the work, like doing the work is actually very difficult. Like, healing is difficult. And I feel like that is going to be another separate podcast, and that's going to be a real deep one. But I think that one of the things that really, really, really sets in for people is that we're dating based on potential and not people who we see a future with. And it's just like, I feel like you deserve better. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you deny yourself the best that you can have? It's like, it's not nice. You know what I'm saying? It's not giving self-love. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, we don't need to be able to settle for maybes. We need to be able to say confidently that we want to be with someone, or that like this is a person who aligns with the things that I look for in a partner. And so honestly, it's okay to seek that in other people if the person that you're with can't provide that. And I know that may sound messy, but it's just like, it's really not. There are some people who just cannot, within their nature, fulfill the needs that you have. And so it's unrealistic for you to be able to expect them to do that. And it doesn't have to be on any bad terms, and it doesn't have to seem like anything crazy. But the whole purpose of healing is for you to become a better version of yourself. And when it comes to being a better version of yourself, it comes with dating a better version of the person that you thought you wanted. And that is okay. And so to answer the question, which was, are they at peace? I feel like sometimes they really aren't at peace. Like, you feel the need to broadcast everything. Like I said, you feel the need to prove points, and it's almost as if you're seeking external validation based off the post that you have, when it comes from a place of knowing that you're just trying to get attention and not just, it's genuinely you posting things because you're happy. And so, like I said, I think that things should flow naturally, and then it starts to come from a place of peace. And so when you're not like doing things to show people, like show off and all that, because like I said, some people be in clubs with their friends, doing all these things, drinking all night, partying all day, da-da-da-da. And it's just like, from the outside looking in, people who have discernment can see right through it. They can see right through it. And I guess that comes to the second Moments with Mo. I'm actually trying to find it right now. My mom sent me something a couple of days ago, and we were having a really good talk. And it says that you don't have to sacrifice your peace by trying to point out someone's true colors. Lack of character always reveals itself in the end. And so, like I said, you don't need to prove the person who you were in a relationship wrong. You don't have to prove that you're healing and you're so better now and you're at peace, because those things flow naturally. You don't need to prove that they were the problem when it shows. Like, it naturally shows that they were the problem when certain things start to reveal. And sometimes your side will never be able to be fully revealed. And you need to find peace with knowing that sometimes it's just how it plays out. That's just how the cookie crumbles. And so that is my take on relationships. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please comment down below any past relationship experiences that you had. Maybe comment your top 5, or just like any relationship horror stories. Like, let's continue the conversation in the comments. But you guys, thank you so much for supporting me. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and definitely share with your friends. And I will see you guys in the next Moments with Mo. Bye, y'all.